green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Go. And a good Tuesday morning, Eagles fans, as we start the rest of the year during the offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles, because we are now more than 24 hours removed from the Eagles' defeat at the hands of the Kansas City Chiefs. Is the pain getting any easier for you? Sometimes it does. I'm not sure that that's the case here today. This is Birds 365. I'm Jody McDonald. John McMullen is winging his way back from the West Coast on a late-night red-eye flight. So in his stead today, our producer and contributor, Tone DeShields, jumps in with me. Tone, any less pain today because you're now more than 24 hours removed?
I mean, Jody, I'll admit, losing the Super Bowl is always painful, but I definitely feel a lot better about it because even though it was a loss, and it was a loss they deserved, the defense did not show up. Was it a loss Jalen Hurts deserved? I don't think so. But in that loss, there were some things that I took from it. And what I took from it is, and this is how I feel, this is my humble opinion, and I stand on it. I personally believe what I learned from this game, even in the loss, Jalen Hurts is the best quarterback in the NFC, and he's a top 5 quarterback in this NFL.
If he's not top 5, he's right there. There are some other guys who have accomplished more than him. He had a top 5 year, unquestionably. He had the second best year. Mahomes was the MVP. He was the runner-up, as he should have been. Mm-hmm. Does that vault him past a guy like Joe Burrow?
No.
Not sure that that's the case. Josh Allen? No.
I mean, to your point, Jody, Josh Allen has never won a conference championship, never been to a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts has. If we're talking about accomplishments,
no, that's what we have to talk about is accomplishments. But Allen does have a couple of high-level superior years under his belt. Jalen's got one.
Fair enough. That's fair.
Now, Jalen's 1 year, his team went further than Josh Allen's team ever has. You're right about that. Does that put him ahead of a guy like Josh Allen, who's got several good all-pro level type years? That's a good fun debate. Right. He's certainly in the like I said, if he's not 5, he's 6. We're probably mincing words here, but you're right in that he is probably the number 1 quarterback in the NFC, and that unfortunately raises one of the ugly realities of what transpired on Sunday, because we prepared for this game, knew it was going to be the Chiefs and the Eagles for 2 weeks. And what the Eagle naysayers were saying, and it unfortunately kind of proved out to be true, the Eagles really did not face a top-flight quarterback all year long. Their 17 regular season games, their 2 playoff games, the best quarterback they faced was probably Dak Prescott. And, oh, by the way, Dak hung a 40 spot on him in the one game that he played against the Eagles this year. So the Eagles defense, which was number 2 overall in the NFL and number 1 against the pass, may have benefited from having played a schedule that didn't test them against the top quarterbacks. And I'll rattle off those 4 AFC names for you: Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Burrow. Those are the top 4 guys in the AFC. And I'll tell you, and this will get some people rolling their eyes, a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, who was having a phenomenal year, but had the many different issues that he had with concussions and the like. They didn't face a healthy Tua or a Herbert or a Burrow or an Allen, and not a Mahomes until the Super Bowl. And we saw what Patrick Mahomes did in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, you're right, Tone, when you point to the defense and go, the defense was, I won't go no-show, but they were a little undressed on Super Bowl Sunday, and maybe they're not as good as we all thought they were because they were never put to a superior test until they got to the Super Bowl.
I may have to push back as far as them being a no-show, but I do agree with you. They didn't face a top-tier quarterback all year. I was talking about this on Good Morning NFC East this morning. The best quarterbacks they faced this season were Dak Prescott, and this is in no particular order, but Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Kyler Murray. You know what I mean? Those are – Aaron Rodgers had a down year, but still, if you look at his numbers, pretty still good. Those numbers are good for anyone else but him. But Aaron Rodgers, the team, had a down year. Dak Prescott turned the ball over tremendously all year. It was, in my opinion, was relatively inconsistent, especially once he got into the playoffs. But overall, I mean, how much stock am I putting into Kyler Murray at this point in his career? I'm starting to not see it with Kyler Murray. Kirk Cousins, we already know what his deal is. Prime time, he's allergic to it. Jared Goff, I think Jared Goff had a sneaky good year this year. But again, those quarterbacks don't compare to anything in the AFC, like you said. But when it comes to that defense in the playoffs, about that defense in the Super Bowl, I don't think they showed up at all, Jody, because if you ask me, you want to know what the Philadelphia Eagles defense was? Keep Patrick Mahomes off the field. And that was the offense. So I can't really give the defense but so much credit about doing anything to limit Patrick Mahomes. It was all offense, sustaining drives, keeping him off the field. But that was just my perspective.
And, oh, by the way, you're right. Aaron Rodgers did not have a good statistical year. We still think he's a talented quarterback. John and I debate this from time to time, so I need your opinion on it. I said this many times here on Birds 365 and everywhere else I do shows. Quarterback passer rating is the worst way to decipher who is the best quarterback on any given year, except for every other one. There is no perfect way to rate or figure out who is the best quarterback. You want to go, eye test worked for me. Okay, if you believe that you're that good a football evaluator, all right, fine. But I'm trying to find a statistic you can use to base your judgment on. I think quarterback rating is the best. It's not perfect. It's imperfect for sure, but it's better than every other way we have of statistically analyzing who the best quarterbacks in a given year were.
When you say quarterback rating, are you talking about the ESPN stat or
passer rating?
Passer rating. Okay.
Passer rating.
Okay, gotcha.
So I'll run down because I don't trust ESPN with.
Neither do I.
There's some subjectivity in there, and they've proven their subjectivity, even with computer rankings. Just boggle one's mind. So here are the top rated quarterbacks in the NFL via passer rating this year. Tua Tagovailoa, they didn't play him. Patrick Mahomes, they played him. It didn't go well in the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo, they didn't play him. Jalen Hurts was fourth. Geno Smith. Oh, that would have been nice if they had gotten tested by Geno during the year. They didn't play Geno Smith. Joe Burrow. Jared Goff, they did play, as you mentioned, had a good, sneaky, under-the-radar type year. 35 against the Eagles? Did he put up a 30? What was the score of the Eagles-Lions first week of the season?
That score was 38-35. You're absolutely correct.
So they didn't quite shut Jared Goff down in the one game they played against him. Josh Allen, they didn't play. Andy Dalton, believe it or not, was number 9. And Andy Dalton stuck one of the very few losses the Eagles had this year on them. Trevor Lawrence, they did beat. He was number 11. Justin Herbert, 12. Daniel Jones, 13. Kirk Cousins, 14. Dak Prescott, 15. There's where the Eagles' schedule lies. 13, Daniel Jones. 14, Kirk Cousins. 15, Dak Prescott. Oh, they played all those guys and they beat Daniel Jones 3 times or twice because he did sit the one game, the last one in the regular season. But of the top 10, didn't face anybody. Until we got to the Super Bowl and Patrick Mahomes was sitting there. And oh, by the way, Patrick Mahomes, I got into a debate on WIP last night with a guy who was ready to anoint Patrick Mahomes and make him the face of the NFL, which he is, which he was before that game was played. And if the game goes the other way and the Eagles win 38-35, guess what? Patrick Mahomes is still the face of the National Football League now with Tom Brady walking away. I don't believe what he did, although he got the MVP award, because I guess a quarterback has to get it, and Jalen Hurts didn't win. Jalen Hurts was the best quarterback on the field on Sunday night, but Patrick Mahomes won the game, so that's why he got the MVP. I don't think that was the game that put him over the top and made him the face of the National Football League. He was already there. You knew Brady was walking away. The torch had already been passed to Patrick Mahomes. It wasn't passed because of what he did on Sunday night. He was Mahomes-like through a very high completion percentage. But, Tone, you could have thrown 2 of those touchdown passes inside the 5-yard line with the defensive breakdowns that the Eagles had. So am I going to put in just this one particular game Patrick Mahomes on this pedestal because he was that great? No, he threw for under 200 yards, and he threw 2 touchdown passes out of the 3 he had that you or I could have thrown.
I actually believe this was his easiest Super Bowl win because of the fact that he only had to play 28 minutes worth of football, and they were extremely efficient. Like you said, 2 of those touchdowns, wide open. And let's be frank about this. He was gifted 7 points because of the turnover by Jalen Hurts. And then special teams got them down to the 5-yard line. So he really didn't have to do more than what was necessary. And I respect that. He was efficient. You know, they took advantage of every minute of those 28 minutes they had. 38 points in 28 minutes. I got to respect the game, Jody. They were efficient. But like you said, you could have threw that ball, some of those passes. I could have thrown some of those passes. And that's why I feel like the defense, they just completely imploded. They looked confused. They looked flabbergasted. But like you said, I think the passer rating is a good barometer, at least right now, because like you said, unless you're just some football guru and you understand mechanics that well, I think passer rating is pretty fair. And you're right. The Eagles they weren't tested all year. They weren't really tested from a quarterback perspective. Did they come across some good defenses? Sure, yeah. But they weren't offensive scoring wasn't the issue. The offense had no problem scoring. You can make an argument, well, maybe the Eagles just ran out of time in that game, because I felt like they were coming. But we can't, play revisionist history. The bottom line is they lost the game, and the Eagles defense, they're going to look a lot different coming from this season going into the next.
Yeah, I never buy into they ran out of time line of logic, because everyone knew it was going to be 60 minutes before it started, right, Tom? They don't change it for the Super Bowl. They don't extend it. They don't cut it. Oh, Rihanna's going to go 34 minutes with her performance, so we got to shorten the game. No, 60 minutes. They're all 60 minutes. So it's 60 minutes, and you must play and coach and get done what you have to get done accordingly. So I just never buy it. Oh, they ran out of time. Not enough time. If there's never another 2 minutes added. They don't do that unless, of course, it goes to overtime, which, I was rooting so bad for, because I had a couple of prop bets, including Jalen Hurts over 50.5 yards, which I felt very strongly about. Even tweeted that out before the game started. I went further. I had him over 75 yards at added value. I had him over 100. I put a couple shekels down on Jalen running over 100, and he stalled out at 70. I needed overtime for a couple more Jalen Hurts runs, and that the best run, maybe the best run he had all game, doesn't even count. You don't get credit yards-wise for a 2-point conversion. So that still would have only gotten him to 72, and I needed to
Should they start doing that, Jody? Should they start counting those in the conversions, the yards? I'm curious. I've never thought about it until now.
It's legit. It's a legit question. maybe it's a separate category. There's so many stupid statistics depending on what website you go to, whatever you want to use as your research tool. Why can't you add what you do on a 2-point conversion? We all know it. It's in the box score, but it's not in the other running stats pages where you go and look. It was a truly heroic effort to drag 2 tacklers into the end zone, and all it shows up on the box score is 2-point conversion. Which, oh, by the way, I don't, Tony, I know you well enough down the line, but you and I don't know each other away from our show here on Birds 365. Are you a gambling guy?
Nah, not really. I've tried.
I didn't think so.
It's not really my thing. My brother is though. He's always texting me, "Hey, did you hear anything about so and so?" I'm like, "Look, I don't work for the NFL."
Wants a little inside information. Good on him. I appreciate the effort. He's trying to get good.
I ain't mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
Exactly. I had never heard of this before. That exchanging texts with my daughter, who, yes, likes to bet on football. She's got an account, and she's actually pretty good at it. She's well out of the game from when she started a couple of years ago. She told me she hit an octopus. Had you ever heard that before?
Never.
I'd never heard it before. I asked her,
was that an 8-leg parlay?
Not an 8-leg, but you're right. You're playing in the right direction. 8. It's for 8 points scored. If a player scores a touchdown and then also is the guy who scores on the 2-point conversion immediately thereafter, it's called an octopus. And I had never heard that before. My daughter tells me to exchange texts. I used my $5 free bet on an octopus, and I hit for $70. So it was 13-1 that an octopus would happen in the game. And that's exactly what Jalen Hurts did. He scored the touchdown, and then he got the 2-point conversion thereafter. The first ever octopus in the Super Bowl since they re-added 2-point conversions years ago. Jalen's the first one to ever do it. I'd never even heard of it, let alone know that you could bet on it in the Super Bowl. I don't think I would have anyway. But my daughter didn't. Sure enough, she hit it. And that's why she ended up making money on the Super Bowl that day, because she hit Jalen Hurts' octopus. But you live and learn, even at my age, watching my 50. I was alive for the first 2 AFL NFL championship games. They didn't call it the Super Bowl until the 3rd Super Bowl. But I was just a wee lad, and I honestly, all apologies to you Packer fans out there, I don't remember the Packers beating the Chiefs or the Raiders the first 2. I do remember the Jets against the Colts in Super Bowl 3, which was actually Super Bowl 1. It was the first time they ever called it the Super Bowl, but they went back and in past sequence renamed the first 2 championship games.
Really quickly, Joe, I got a question for her, but I know this is the Eagles show, but for the next 30 seconds, I need this to be Jets 365.
Sure.
Me personally, I think the way the Jets are looking right now from a personnel standpoint, I think they're a quarterback away from challenging the Bills. What do you think about that?
I see Vegas has come out with betting lines, where you rank, power ratings. I just saw ESPN's. I stopped at the first couple because the Eagles going into next year, Chiefs are number 1, Eagles are number 2, as they should be. Cowboys were number 6. I was interested to see where they were. See, this is why ESPN is kind of off the charts for me. Dallas was ahead of San Francisco all year long. Even after San Francisco beat Dallas in the playoffs, in their computer rankings, they still had Dallas ahead of San Francisco. How does that make any sense whatsoever? So I just checked their power rankings going forward for next year. I go, Dallas will be ahead of San Francisco. They're not. San Francisco is 3. They're right behind Eagles, and the Cowboys came in at number 6.
Inconsistent.
I got to check and see where the Jets are. I saw a couple gambling outlets yesterday listing the prices if you want to bet them to win the championship. Jets are like 12th overall in football, which is borderline top 3. They haven't been above 500 in a dog's age.
That's
so at least the gambling outlets out there believe Jets are going to get a quarterback. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers. And if they do, all of a sudden they're competitive next year. The AFC East will be as hard a division as there is in football next year if they go out and get themselves a quarterback. Cross my fingers that that's the case. I'll tell you one thing for sure. No, it's not Zach Wilson. That's something Eagle fans don't have to worry a little bit because they've got their Jalen Hurts to go forward with. All right, we're going forward here on Birds 365. Tony Shields in for Johnny Mac today. We got a pair of GMs joining us. And when I say GMs, I'm not talking general managers. Howie Roseman is not going to be on the show today. We've never been able to wrangle Howie. Don't hold your breath waiting for Howie to show up here on Birds 365. But you know who is going to show up? That would be one Jeff Mosher. He's going to join us coming up in the next 5 minutes inside the Birds, both podcast and website. And then a little bit later, we'll go national on you, old school on you. Gary Myers, one of the best NFL writers, reporters, Hall of Fame selector. He's going to join us in hour number 2. But up next, the man, Moshe, is going to join us. Jeff Mosher, next here on Birds 365.
The greatest fans on earth. It's a bold statement, but would you expect anything less from Philadelphia? 58 years of heartache creates a toughness, a grit, a resolve not found in most. Sure, our prayers were answered, but now that we've had a taste, we're looking for more. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits, go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
Jeff D'Ambrosio doesn't need a special event to appreciate his customers. Jeff shows his appreciation to them every day of the year. Jeff makes sure to stock more new inventory than anyone and guarantees prices and payments that nobody can beat. There are so many reasons that thousands of customers know Jeff is the easy, friendly place to do business. More for their trades. No judgment zone for credit issues. The best, most reliable service department in the country. That's why I like Jeff, and I know you will too. Jeff will satisfy you every day. Jeff D'Ambrosio, Destination Downingtown, Owner Appreciation Event.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Why do millions of people every year from around the world visit Philly's Rocky statue?
You want to tell me the sky is burgundy with green stripes and yellow polka dots? I'll meet you on that. But you're never going to convince me Rocky is anything other than the pure greatness that it is. Never going to happen.
Join me, Paul Farber, for WHYY's The Statue. We're going on a journey to explore the biography of the Rocky statue. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Appreciate you streaming in with us on Birds 365. Tony Shields in for Johnny Mac today with me, Jody Mac. We got Jeff Mosher good enough to come on board with us for a good couple of minutes here. Was out in Arizona leading up to the game and then had to watch, like all the rest of us, the Eagles come up short on Super Bowl Sunday. G. Mosher, always appreciate when you hop on board, and I know you appreciate as a very good writer the words that you use to describe something. Give me the main reason that the Philadelphia Eagles are not Super Bowl champions and lost that game on Sunday. What was the main reason in your eyes?
Self-inflicted wounds.
That's
Self-inflicted wounds in a close game. You know that In a Super Bowl especially, you have to be more careful, more deliberate in everything you do. And the slightest mistake you make that you probably don't often make even in the preseason or on a regular season might hurt you. Obviously, you look at Jalen Hurts' fumble that led to a touchdown, not a play he typically you worry about with him or makes, but that was a swing play. And then something you did worry about going into the game came back to haunt them, and that was special teams. So that was a huge swing when the combination of a bad punt and a bad, job on the return, which was aided by the bad punt. But that was it. That set it up right there for the Chiefs to get that momentum back after they came out of the third quarter and scored to get themselves back in the game. And that was tough.
Jeff, I have a question for you, and this definitely relates to everything you just said. Because of the self-inflicted wounds, because of the dynamic of the game, the Chiefs only had the ball for about 28 minutes, but they were so efficient and put up 38 points in those 28 minutes. Because of the situational football, the punt return and the scoop and score from the Chiefs defense, is it fair to say that this probably was Patrick Mahomes' easiest Super Bowl win?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were losing in the fourth quarter against the 49ers a couple of years ago. You can go fact check me on that. But this one, I mean, I get what you're saying because he completed a high percentage of his passes, but he was out there, legging it out on an ankle injury that he re-aggravated during the game. They were down by 10 at half. I just think that this kind of comes part and parcel with playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Unlike some other teams, you have a 10-point lead on them. They flourish. They are the best team I've ever seen with a deficit. If you go look at the statistics of teams in the Super Bowl, especially or in the playoffs, who are trailing by a certain number of points, whether it's 7, 10 by a certain time, third quarter, fourth quarter, they overwhelmingly favor the team that's ahead. But you go back to how they won their first Super Bowl when they were down by, I think 17-0 in the first quarter of the AFC Championship game to the Titans. And then they won that game like 30-something to 17. I mean, they just completely went on a tear and it was over. So this is what the Chiefs do. The only thing I would say that may have made it a little bit more comfortable for Patrick in this game compared to others is that the Eagles pass rush did not get to him at all.
How much of the lack of pass rush do you think was the bad field? And we know the bad field was the bad field for both teams, so it should affect them both the same, but it doesn't always work that way. We know Hassan Reddick's a speed guy, and Josh Sweat is probably considered a speed guy, not as much as Reddick on the other side, that they just couldn't get leverage because of the field. Is that a legitimate contributing explanation or factor to them getting 0 sacks in this game?
Yeah, I think some of it is fair because you saw instances of guys beating their man one-on-one, then falling. But you made the same point. The Chiefs had to play on the same field. They may not have the type of speed on the edges defensively that the Eagles have, but they have speed at other positions. And I saw Isaiah Pacheco take a draw up the middle and just fall down right on that painted area where he got 3 yards and just slipped and fell. That might have been another 10 to 15 yarder for Pacheco, the way he had an opening there. So it did affect both teams. And I think it hit both teams hard where they are strong, but it's not like the Eagles to not get a lot of pressure on a quarterback. And certainly that had something to do with slowing them down. The NFL should be ashamed. And that surface, it's not the first time it's been a problem. When the Eagles went out there to play in October, we spent a great deal of time on Inside the Birds talking about how many injuries had occurred at that stadium. I think Andy Reid lost a player to an ACL injury either earlier that year or maybe late last year. It's the same stadium. It's grass. So they must say, they say, oh, you guys complain about turf. Well, this is grass. Yeah, but it's like grass brought in on trays, right? I mean, it's not. And then they painted it all up. It was not only did the team suffer, but I thought the viewers of the most important and most watched game in the world suffered because it was silly watching players out there falling left and right. It was like Keystone Cops out there. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. like you said, like that grass, the whole situation with the grass, it affected both teams.
Yes.
And there was moments in that game where I felt like I saw the Chiefs players falling more than Eagles players. But, I digress. You guys mentioned the lack of pass rush. I have to ask, we talk about this defense and we always talk about the caliber of quarterback they played all year and how the pass rush has just been wreaking havoc on any and everybody that they faced.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the lesser the quarterback, the longer they take to make a decision. Is it possible, or is it fair to say that this lack of pass rush exposed the lack of, I don't want to say talent, but is it fair that this pass rush or the lack of pass rush exposed the Eagles DBs or exposed their pass defense?
Well, I mean, a little bit, but I think it was more the lack of pass rush coupled with the way the Chiefs schemed the Eagles and outclassed them from an offensive play calling standpoint, exposed what the Eagles do defensively. Because I think individually, those guys are talented players.
Agreed.
But if you go look at the 2 walk-in touchdowns, right? They were caught out of place. Darius Slay followed Kadarius Toney inside, then could not come close to getting him on the outside move, which is something that the Jaguars pulled off against the Eagles earlier this year. Doesn't make Slay a bad player. It just means in that specific formation, the way they played defense against that in that situation is something that the Chiefs saw on tape and thought that they could come up with a counter for. And then the Sky Moore touchdown on the other side, well, that came on a blitz. And I think Avonte Maddox is the late guy to recover. He's not blitzing, but again, Sky Moore sort of came from the outside in, sort of looked like he's either going to line up sort of offset from the quarterback, maybe take a run. They're expecting something gadgety, and all he really does is leak right back out. And we know Avante's dealing with the toe injury, and he just wasn't quick enough to get back there. He wasn't nearly quick enough to get back on the ball there.
What wasn't even in the picture. I knew Slay was the guy who got victimized on the first walk-in touchdown. I wasn't sure it was on the second because there was no one in the picture. You didn't know who the hell was supposed to be in the same neighborhood he was. The Eagles had nobody there. All right, so the defense comes up small. Everybody wants to lop it off on Jonathan Gannon. And if you're going to give Gannon all the grief for this defensive effort more so than the players, that's fine. But I don't remember people going crazy about Jonathan Gannon holding his 2 playoff opponents to 7 points apiece in the first 2 games. So all I'm saying is be consistent. If you want to beat the snot out of Gannon here, have at it. But I hope you gave him all the proper credit for the first couple of games. He didn't do a good job. I'm not looking to give him a free pass, but the players didn't play well. Some guys, Pro Bowls, all-pro players, did not have good games. I don't know if it was always Gannon and putting him in the worst or the best positions, and they just didn't get the job done. He's going to be meeting with Arizona. I already met with him yesterday, and he could potentially be their next head coach. How big a loss would it be if Gannon is not the defensive coordinator of this team next year?
I mean, it is a loss because he's been your defensive coordinator for the last 2 years. You've completely rebuilt and redesigned how you play defense to fit, I want to say fit his vision, because I think that the league was trending. I mean, we're seeing a ton of teams playing 5-man fronts and Vic Fangio style defenses, but the players do like him regardless of, what fans say. And as you just said, he did have a pretty good year as a defensive coordinator. And you're right that it's so we've talked about so many parallels between the 2017 playoffs and this last one. And, other than the Eagles not winning the Super Bowl, same kind of thing. Jim Schwartz's defense was great against Atlanta, was great against the Vikings. It was not great in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. And you could say great against the Giants, great against the 49ers, but John Gannon's defense was not great against the Chiefs. I think the issues with his defense, the one area, Jody, I might say this, where losing Jonathan Gannon might be a good thing, and that always depends on what you replace him is that I think what we've learned in 2 years is that the Eagles might need kind of a fundamental reset on their defensive philosophy as to what they want to do within the construct of their defense. Their defense by itself is good. It's got great players. They set a record for sacks. They had all pros everywhere. But for 2 years now, when this defense has had to play a really good quarterback or a really good offensive scheme, and then even sometimes when they haven't, like the New Orleans Saints game when Dalton starts off 14 for 14, even though that was they only scored 14 points that game. You can never let Andy Dalton be 14 for 14 on you. There are just too many times where an opponent sort of knows what the Eagles want to do and is able to game plan against it. And you just saw that really in the Super Bowl. And by the way, like for people killing Gannon, like 38 points. Okay, 7 were gift wrapped. I'm sorry, 7 were defensive points, right? So we give up 31. I think we can all agree as rational sports fans that when a punt return goes down to the 3, you have a very little chance of, you could say, all right, hold them to a field goal. That's still 10 points that you're then, but I would say that's an easy touchdown for a team. I think the Chiefs score from there on the 85 Bears.
Get
right?
Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Yeah, that's a 7 spot.
Right. So to me, I say 14 points are not on Jonathan Gannon, right? It's 24 points, which still isn't great, but you scored 35. You win that game by 11, right? If those 2 mistakes don't happen. But it does bring up to the bigger point that there's just something about what he does or does not do fundamentally that quarterbacks sort of take comfort in. That he's not a pain in the ass type of defensive coordinator the way Steve Spagnuolo is or Martindale is. Like those guys could get beat, but they really make the quarterback either think, and they break down your protection schemes. They do all sorts of crazy stuff that keep you up at night. I don't think Jonathan Gannon keeps quarterbacks up at night. I think his pass rushers do, but I don't think – I think individually some of his defensive backs do, but I don't think what he does as a coordinator scares anybody, if that makes sense.
So let me follow up. Thanks, Tone. If they stay in-house, if he decides to take the Arizona job, it's offered him, he takes it, which, oh, by the way, I'd turn it down if I were Jonathan Gannon, but that's just me. If they stay in-house, Darrell Wilson seems to be the most logical choice. Do you think he would go in another direction or would he just tinker with the defense? Or do you think the defense gets rubber stamp, play exactly the same way they did because he was under Gannon these last 2 years?
You know, I think they'll give him, because he's a veteran guy. He's been a player. He's been an assistant coach for a while. He's well regarded by the team. I think they would give him a certain degree of autonomy of how he wanted to do it. Although I don't think that if he said, I'd like to go back to running a conventional 4-3, I don't see that happening, right? I think that they want to keep the defense that's best for the personnel they got.
Because of Reddick? Would you say Reddick's the main reason that would be the case?
Well, I mean, you drafted Jordan Davis in the first round last year. Yeah, you've got overhang players now, like Hassan Reddick, no doubt about it. So I would think that would be the case. But I do think sometimes like a different set of eyes, a different play caller, or a different philosophy within the same framework can make a difference. And, we will see if that's the case, if it's Denard Wilson or somebody else, if someone else just does something differently, whether it's, I don't want to say more blitzing. Everybody always says more blitzing. No. Jonathan Gannon blitzed what? His second highest of the year against the Chiefs. He blitzed on the play where Sky Moore had a walk-in touchdown. That's not it. It's more about, your tighter coverage, your post-snap disguise, your pre-snap movement, your overloads, your stunting. Like there's 1,000 different things that a defensive coordinator can do to make life miserable for a quarterback. And maybe a fresh set of eyes or a fresh brain on it would be a good thing for the Eagles.
Yeah. I think we all can definitely agree that the Eagles defense, Gannon and players and the turf didn't have their best game.
Yeah.
But if I may, I want to transition to the offensive side of the ball, specifically Shane Steichen, former OC for the Philadelphia Eagles, now the head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. Good luck with Jim Irsay. But I have to ask you this, Jeff, just kind of similar to what Jody asked about losing Gannon and what kind of impact that may have. Losing Shane Steichen, I'm curious to know what's your perspective on what impact that may have on maybe Jalen Hurts, the way this game is being called for Philadelphia Eagles, and who do you see being elevated to that position, or do you see them outsourcing?
That's a good question. I'm sure they will look at every option. They have some good in-house candidates, one of them being Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach, who I think would be a really logical replacement because of all the work that he's done with Jalen Hurts and how Hurts-centric this offensive is, and with the RPOs and everything like that. There's a guy named Kevin Patullo who doesn't get mentioned a lot, but he's Nick Sirianni's right-hand man, brought him in from Indianapolis. He's the passing game coordinator. And the Eagles' passing game took a major jump this year. And as we all know, teams like their passing guys to be their play callers. So he would be another one. I don't know that they would promote Jeff Stoutland to it unless he wanted it. But that would be some guy that would maybe be a dark horse candidate. So they've got some guys in-house that are all familiar with the offense that they've been running here post this year and the year before. Now, Shane Steichen called the plays, so I don't want to take any credit away from him. And I thought there were times this year where the Eagles were almost brilliant with their sequencing, like what they're running now, setting up what they're going to run next, setting up what they're going to run.
I think that was the biggest jump this year, sequencing.
Absolutely. The play calling and the sequencing, having an intent and a purpose behind what you're doing, and then keeping it fresh all year long so that you didn't get stale within that. I thought they were fantastic at that. But I also want to say that while Shane called the plays and did a great job of that, I just mentioned 3 other names, Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo, and Jeff Stoutland, who are a really big part of the design of the offense. Stoutland designs the run game. We all know how good and diversified and difficult to stop the run game can be. So I think they're okay keeping it in-house and sort of, I don't know that you're going to lose a whole lot unless whoever gets that spot just is a bad play caller, and doesn't have a good feel and rhythm for the game the way Shane Steichen had to have. But I have less concern sort of about how the playbook's going to look, because I still think you have a lot of really good offensive minds coming off this really good year who will be back, and then they'll probably add somebody else to the fold as well.
Yeah, really quickly, Jolie, if I could throw this in really quick, I have to throw this in about the sequencing, because you just got me geeked, Jeff, I'll be honest. There was a game, the Steelers game, and I can't remember the exact play or the terminology for it, but there was a play where they set up a screen for Dallas Goedert, and Zach Pascal was the blocker on the left side of the field.
Yep.
Right. And Goddard got the screen pass, and
that
they
was
got
a great screen too. I remember what you're talking about.
Right. And they got whatever yards they got. I want to say maybe a drive or two later, they ran the exact same play, but instead of Zach Pascal instead of Zach Pascal screening for Dallas Goedert, he cut up the field wide open for a touchdown.
Yep.
That was so beautiful to me. That was one of the first moments I realized this passing game has gone to another level. The play calling, the sequencing, the intention has gone to another level. You just got me excited when when you said the word sequencing. I immediately knew what you were talking about, and that was one situation that stood out to me.
Yeah, when offense sort of looks like poetry in motion, it's not by accident, and it's not always just because you have great players. Every team has great players. The Steelers have great offensive players. They have terrible offensive play calling and offensive sequencing, So I agree. And that was something that we talked about a lot on Inside the Birds. That was very apparent in the first 8, 9, 10 games of the season. It was there all year, but they kind of went through that scoring binge when Goddard got hurt, where they were just like throwing the ball all over everybody. And I almost felt they got away from the great mix and harmony, because they were just going shot play on everybody. Tennessee shot plays, right? And then they got back to it as the playoffs began. And I think it makes them a much more difficult team to defend when they've got 4 or 5 options within each play. And to your point, when they start running different plays from the same formations, right, that really confuse the defense, and your eyes start to get lost because you think you're seeing one thing, but in reality, something else is coming at you.
Jeff, I'm sure you talked about it on Inside the Birds, because we talked about it here on Birds 365. One of the other downsides of just not having a parade after losing a game to the Chiefs is, next year's team is not going to be the same as this year's team. There is a change in the roster every single year. That happens whether you win a Super Bowl, whether you go 2-15, doesn't matter. It's turnover every year. But you feel badly when you have a season like this and you get to the final game of the year and you just come up short, and guys aren't going to be back. Percentage chance that Miles Sanders is going to be back, because I congratulated him after the game for his last game in an Eagle uniform, because I just don't think, not only doesn't it fit the Eagles' MO of what they want to invest in, who they'll spend money on, turning over rosters, he also didn't play well, was hurt basically last couple months of the season, if not a knee, a hand, or whatever else. What's the percentage chance that they just perfectly aligns that no one else wants Miles Sanders, and the Eagles go, all right, you come back on a cheap deal? Yeah, Miles, come on. We'll give you a big hug. Come on back into the fold. Any chance that happens?
Really, that's the only. It's not going to be a race to re-sign him. It's not going to be like number one on that priority list of an extension to get done. It is exactly how you said. If the market for Miles Sanders happens to be not what he expected and his price is low. And by the way, that could happen because as good of a year he had, this is like the golden year for free agent running backs. Theoretically, some of these guys can get tagged or extended before. But as we sit here today, Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, who just had like a ridiculously good year for the Raiders, right? Barkley, Pollard, Jacobs, and somebody else, 4. And then Miles is one of those 5 guys who's going to be a free agent. So it's very rare in the offseason that you got 5 teams that are really want running backs badly. I mean, it's not one of those desirable positions these days to go spend a ton of money on in free agency. So if those guys all hit free agency, it's going to be hard for Miles to find a taker at a really good rate for him. So then you can see the Eagles saying, all right, well, here's our offer to you, take it or leave it. And then he's in a situation where he may feel like, I got to take this.
I think what makes it even harder for Miles Sanders outside of just the market is the fact that you had a guy, a seventh rounder in Isaiah Pacheco outplay him and on the biggest of stages. And not only did he outplay him, he ran the ball just flat out better. He ran the ball with intention. He ran the ball angry. He ran the ball like he wanted to win this game. And there were moments in that game, especially in the first run play, you saw Miles Sanders just revert back to this, just continue to bounce it outside, and it led to a fumble. Can you speak on just the dynamic of how the Eagles handle the running back position in terms of allocating resources to it? And a guy like Isaiah Pacheco that the Chiefs found in the 7th round, doesn't that by nature make it that much more difficult for a guy like Miles Sanders to get paid?
No, it's always been, right? Because you've seen throughout the years running backs, no matter where you draft them, if you put them in a great offensive scheme and they have a decent amount of talent, they can at least get the job done. I mean, Kenny Gainwell, to your point, was outsnapped Miles Sanders, and he's a 5th round pick who didn't even play his last year in college. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to see. First of all, we're 36 hours removed from the Super Bowl, and I'm still having trouble processing and digesting the idea that Andy Reid established the run in the second half of the Super Bowl. I'm still struggling with that because I kept saying, imagine if, because we knew that the Eagles, if you can get them in their 4-man fronts, and the way Pacheco has been running this year, he might be a problem. We talked about that on the Inside the Birds, but then we would say, but you know what? He's going to just ignore him anyway, so it doesn't matter. But he didn't. He stuck with Pacheco, and that guy does run violently. I like his running style. From Vineland, New Jersey, by the way. I'm sure you guys have brought that
Rutgers
up.
guy.
Yeah, Rutgers guy. Well, I don't bring that part up because I'm a Penn State guy. But the Vineland thing is fun to mention.
What we brought up last week was, who is Mike Trout rooting for? Because he's a Vineland guy, and you got a Vineland guy on the Chiefs. But we know how big an Eagle fan he was. I was looking for Mike Trout in the crowd to see, was he wearing a Pacheco jersey or his usual Eagles garb?
Now, Mike Trout is a Millville guy. You don't want to cross the street. They're very close to each other, but they may be rivals, Jody. You might be when you're in South Jersey,
if you're from where I am. Yeah, that's the same thing.
Millville, it's just all South Jersey, right? You just throw it all in there.
It's not the shore. It's not up here in Camden/Burlington County. That's one big area.
It's in that's the Pine Barrens. We're all just in the Pine Barrens.
Exactly right.
All right. But to get back to the point, I this is going to be a very interesting offseason for running back, and the Eagles have historically wanted to keep a running back who has had a year like Miles. They extended Shady. They gave Brian Westbrook the money, albeit a little late, but they finally gave him his money. They went a while without having a guy who was sort of a 3-down back, but they don't even throw the ball in this offense as a running back. So I'm not even sure that it's going to matter that much.
All right, I'm going to ask you to evaluate the use of a phrase that I'm going to use. That different people use it for different reasons, have different definitions of it, but you've used it, I've used it, everybody uses it. Nucleus. The Eagles' nucleus. How deep is their nucleus? I'll give you the guys that I wrote down. They're certainly deeper on offense than they are on defense. You got Hurts, you got Devontae, you got AJ, you got Goddard, You got Lane. I'm still putting Lane in. He's young enough, but I think you call him part of the nucleus. Dickerson and Mailata. That's 7 deep. That's 7 out of 11. That's pretty damn good. No running backs. Can't put Kelsey in there because we don't even know that Kelsey's going to be back just yet. If you want to put Jurgens in there, I think you got to put him in there as a question mark. If you're going to say he's part of the nucleus, really, and how many downs did he play? That's a question mark for me. The bigger question is on the defensive side. You've got Sweat, you got Reddick, you got Avante, and you got Slay. That's it. That's 4 guys. You want to give me Nakobe Dean? You want to tell me that Jordan Davis has already cemented himself? Last year's draft picks didn't Dean didn't play at all. And Davis got off to a good start, got hurt, got supplanted by veteran guys who came in and took snaps away from him. There were only 4 deep as the core, the nucleus on defense. Is 11 guys enough? Do you have any problems with the list that I put forth?
Did you put A.J. Brown on that list when you're talking about offense?
Oh,
okay. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't have any issues with that list. I mean, this is such a rare situation where you have so many players who are on expiring contracts that I think what you basically did was name anybody who's not on an expiring contract, right? So yeah, that's your nucleus, right?
I left Derek Barnett out if that was someone that you
No, I think he could be on an expiring. I know it was a 2-year deal.
Slay only has 1 year left. I mean, Slay 1 year,
Yeah.
17 million. I don't know if they feel comfortable giving him that 17 million at this point.
I certainly wouldn't.
No, is that enough? Is that enough of a nucleus for us to be very confident about this team going forward for the next several years? Because if you're talking nucleus, it isn't just purely 2023. It's got to be 23, 24, 25. Is that a deep enough number of players for you to go, all right, yeah, screw it, we lost it this year, but we've got a really good chance to go back over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think so. Because the players you mentioned were at players of premier importance to this team and usually in the NFL. I mean, you mentioned the quarterback, you mentioned the wide receiver, you did mention the cornerback and Slay, you mentioned the 2 pass rushers and Sweat and Reddick. You know, you can find your interior lineman, you can find your interior offensive lineman, you can find, a second or third tight end. Linebackers, to be fair, you can find. I mean, the Eagles are on a new set of linebackers every year, it seems anyway. Safeties, you can find. I mean, Lord knows the Eagles don't value safety the way some other teams do. I mean, they haven't drafted one high in, I don't know, since I was in diapers, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, I think if your quarterback plays at a pretty high level and you continue to work on building up the trenches offensively and defensively, then you're going to be good. I think some of the best teams that don't win the Super Bowl, you find that they still get it done within a certain window. Remember the Ravens, for the longest time with Joe Flacco were trying to win the Super Bowl, and they had some really good teams that kept losing to New England. And then the last year of Flacco's deal, he just gets hot in the playoffs, beats Denver on the road. Then they win I forget who they beat, maybe it was New England in the AFC Championship, and they go win the Super Bowl. And that wasn't their best Ravens team, but that was the team that, put it all together in that moment. Torrey Smith has talked about that. And I think we've seen that a couple of times with different teams.
So, really quickly, last one from me, Jeff. I appreciate you for locking in with us as always. Inside the Birds, Adam Kaplan, DeCheco, those guys do great work over there. Appreciate you guys as always. Final question for me. Jalen Hurts, he, even in the loss, and yes, they lost the game, and we're not going to try to adjust up the L, but the reality is through every game, win or lose, you have to be able to take something from it that you can stand on. There has to be some silver lining. And for me, the silver lining is you found out Jalen Hurts can wheel and deal on one of the biggest stages. So let me ask you this. Has Jalen Hurts proven that he's the best quarterback in the NFC? And has he proven that he deserves consideration or is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL?
I mean, I always hate judging somebody after 1 year doing that. But I mean, to your point on the NFC, who's going to come in and have a better year next year than Jalen Hurts? I mean, pound for pound, I still think Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I know he didn't have his best year, but they had to completely reshape that entire team and receiver staff. So I still,
to your point, for some reason, I don't know why I always look at guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady like they're just separate category. I don't know why I do that in my brain for some reason.
No, I think that people do that too. It's just like you almost don't count them because they're on a greatness level. But I would never count out Aaron Rodgers. But I mean, Dak had a heavy interception year. He just wasn't as prolific consistently prolific. But again, I don't like to judge guys on their best or their worst year either. So Dak had 15 interceptions this year, and he went into the year as one of the least intercepted career quarterbacks there was. So maybe it was the loss of Amari Cooper. I don't know. I feel really comfortable in saying this about Jalen Hurts. He was damn impressive. He was the best quarterback he's not a better quarterback than Mahomes, but he had the better game. I mean, he was dynamic. I know he fumbled the ball and that sucked, but he would have been the Super Bowl MVP if the Eagles won that game, and they didn't lose it because of him. So he rescued that team quite a bit. So he's great, and he's got a chance to be top 3, top 5 if this keeps up. But that's something that guys don't just get from one year. You got to kind of earn that label by putting together 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of it.
Fair enough.
But I do believe he laid the groundwork for it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, it was a fluke or anything.
Moshe, let me finish up with Hurts as well. Today is Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Jeff.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to you.
Which means we are 1 month from free agency. March 13th, it starts. Legal tampering, the dumbest phrase in the National Football League. That means the Eagles have 1 month to get the Jalen Hurts contract extension done. You want to have your cap in place. You want to know what you're dedicating to him so you can spend elsewhere. There's going to be a lot of math done, a lot of cap crunching done between now and then. But you need to kind of make the dominoes line up. And the easiest way would be to get the first domino done, and that's Jalen's extension. Yay or nay, and how big is big?
Yes, he's getting an extension, and it will be big. It'll be top 5 big. That's how big it'll be.
That's close to $50 million, big guy.
It is. Now, not to get too mathy on you, but there's a real advantage that the Eagles have here, that he has 1 year left on a deal and that he only makes like $2.5 million next year. Because what a lot of teams do, the Seahawks did this with Russell Wilson, is you sign him to an extension that technically doesn't begin until the 2024 season, right? But you put a lot of that new money, the guaranteed money, you put a good chunk of it into this upcoming season. So let's say instead of making 2.8 on the books, you put like 25 million of that new money he's going to get into next year. That means his cap number is like 27 million because he's already supposed to make 2, right? Around 2.8. So call it 28 million, which is a lot of money. But for a quarterback, that's not a ton of money. If you're getting him at 28 million on the cap, that's bargain compared to guys who are 40, 50, 60 million, right?
Right.
And then you figure out a way going forward to have that extension with 25 million less attached to it because you already paid it up in the last year of his 4-year deal. And that in itself will help keep the cap number down a little bit as you spread it out over 5 or 6 years. So yes, it'll be exorbitant. It'll still make a lot, but I guarantee you when it's all said and done, his cap number year by year for the first 3 or 4 years of the deal will not be what Kyler Murray is getting, what Dak, guys who were right at free agency and first-round picks and had to sign big deals because of what they already were making, what the precedent was.
I like your optimistic math. It all depends on how you look at it. You can either go, oh, this is good because they'll be saving down the road when they could have been taking it even more outrageous in. Or you can look at it as, wait a minute, he's going to be making 27 million against the cap, and he was making 2 million this year. We're up 25 million in the quarterback position. Yeah, compared to everybody else in the league, he's still a bargain. Right. Compared to himself from the year before, where you came this close to winning a Super Bowl but didn't. As a $2 million quarterback, you go, oh shoot, how are we going to get everybody else in here?
Right, you're still plus 23 million, that you didn't have last year to spend, and then of course that has to come from somebody else getting cut. So I get it.
Exactly right. Which they'll be covering on Inside the Birds all year for you. We'll be talking about it here on Birds 365. And yes, every once in a while, we will invite Jeff Mosher in anytime he joins us. He brings great insight. Thanks for doing it today, GM.
You got it, guys. Have a good one.
Jeff Mosher, Inside the Birds, the podcast and the website, jumping in with us here on Birds 365. All right, quickie timeout coming. I got a couple more things to run by Tone. And then Gary Myers, longtime NFL writer and author, Hall of Fame selector. So he was busy last week. The new inductees got in. Always good to shoot the football breeze with Gary Myers. He's going to join us less than 20 minutes from now here on Birds 365.
Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer 3 major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
Why do millions of people every year from around the world visit Philly's Rocky statue?
You want to tell me the sky is burgundy with green stripes and yellow polka dots? I'll meet you on that. But you're never going to convince me Rocky is anything other than the pure greatness that it is. Never going to happen.
Join me, Paul Farber, for WHYY's The Statue. We're going on a journey to explore the biography of the Rocky statue. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
You've got Tone DeShields in for Johnny Mac today. You got me, Johnny Mac. It is Birds 365. Yeah, every passing hour, the pain of the Super Bowl loss decreases about much. Not a whole hell of a lot, but it does get a little bit less. And before you know it, there will be transactions coming that'll let us sink our teeth into the Birds for 2023, which in most Vegas outlets are the third choice, the fourth choice. Some have San Francisco ahead of the Eagles. Everybody has Kansas City as the number one choice. Some have Buffalo ahead. Cincinnati and the Bengals are the Cincinnati Bengals and Eagles are on that same par. They're not the favorite to go back. Kansas City is, and then it's a bunch of teams that are grouped together, and the Eagles are certainly in that group. So they should have a shot again next year, but they've got a lot of offseason work to do, a bunch of free agents to get done. But as we just discussed with Jeff, Tone, they got to get the extension for Jalen Hurts done. And sure enough, I was dealing with it again last night. Got a call on WIP. Guy says they can get Hurts done if they offer him 3 years, $120 million. No, they can't. He's not getting 3 years. You can give the benchmark other quarterbacks, Deshaun Watson, 5-year deal. Who am I forgetting? Josh Allen, 6-year deal. Kyler Murray, who has not even come close to doing what Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts' year this year overshadows anything that Kyler Murray's ever done in the National Football League. 5 years, $230 million. So if you think that you're going to get Jalen Hurts on the cheap, if he's going to do the Eagles a favor and give them a hometown discount, he's a good guy. I think he loves Philadelphia. He certainly puts that forth as a step. This is his chance to get paid. And why shouldn't he make as much, if not more, and I say more, than a guy like Kyler Murray? And if you're an Eagle fan, how can you expect him to settle for less? It's got to be a 5-year deal, right, Tone?
Yeah, it's a bit selfish, for some fans to think that he's just supposed to just play for pennies on the dollar. You know what I mean? Hey, he just loves Philly. He loves Philly cheesesteaks. He loves soft pretzels and water ice. He loves it. It's not realistic. At the end of the day, he's a contractor, and his services require a certain level of compensation, and his performance, the results, have elevated that level of compensation. You mentioned guys like Kyler Murray, you mentioned Deshaun Watson. I'm looking at Kyler Murray's contract. I'm not even really talking about the years, because I think the years, like you said, are going to be 5, something like that. But an average salary for Kyler Murray, $46.1 million. Russell Wilson, $48.5 million. Deshaun Watson, $46 million. Patrick Mahomes is making less than those guys with $45 million. They gave him a 10-year contract, half $500 million, but the way it's structured. Josh Allen, $43 million. Aaron Rodgers, $50.2 million. So I think, if I'm being completely honest with you, Jody, Jalen Hurts is going to get, at the bare minimum, he's going to get $49 million. Because, again, as you elevate your game, as you elevate your stock, as the results begin to, funnel out, Jalen Hurts has shown that he can play on an extremely high level. He can make every throw. I think that conversation needs to be put to bed. He can make every single throw. You saw in the Super Bowl, he can make any throw you need him to make at any given moment. And I think that's where the money is right there. What are the throws you can make, right? And I don't care how strong your arm is. No one's asking you to throw the ball 80 yards, 60 yards every play. That's not realistic, but the fact that he's able to make every throw efficiently, competently, and he's shown an ability to sustain drives, be reliable. He's a leader. He's a man's man. You know what I mean? Like, this team follows him wherever he goes. Why would you want to shortchange a guy like that? It doesn't really make too much sense to me. But again, I think that contract starts at $49 million. Joe Banner was on the Rich Eisen show, and he said that contract is probably going to be 51, 52, something around there. So look, I'm all for guys getting paid. I've never been mad at guys going to get their money. But what I will say is this: it's important to understand the dynamic of your success. Jalen Hurts improved his game, leaps and bounds, but also concurrently, the roster was improved beside him as well. So I think Jalen Hurts is smart enough to say, okay, I took my game to this level. The roster around me helped elevate me, and I also helped elevate them. I need to make sure I get mine, while at the same time, I'm able to keep us in contention. I don't want to gut us. So I'm not telling him to take a pay cut. I'm just simply
exactly what you told him. Wait, you can't have it both ways. I'm going to get mine. Come on, but we've got to leave something for everybody else. No,
I knew you were going to do it, Jody.
$50 million, he's not leaving anything for anybody else.
So hear me out on this. Hear me out on this. I never encourage guys to take less than what they deserve. Never. All I say is be mindful. Be mindful of what your contract does. Be mindful. Take what you want. I'm never going to judge you. Just be mindful. That's all. And I think Jalen Hurts is a smart enough guy that he's mindful.
Mindful is nice. The only thing that matters is your actions. And he's got to take care of himself first.
Absolutely.
And he's got to be mindful. I'm mindful of it, Howie. It's on you. That's how the conversation has to go. It's not his job to keep everybody else's cap number in place. That's on Howie.
And to your point, Jody, to your point, not to interrupt, but to your point, the Chiefs gave Patrick Mahomes a lot of money, and they still got where they were because they drafted well and they developed players, and they were able to put those guys in positions to succeed. Coaches elevated those players. So again, like you said, it's up to Howie Roseman to bring in a nice new crop of talent to put with Jalen Hurts and the rest of those guys, but also was up to the coaching staff to help scheme and coach those guys up. You know what I mean? And, you know, look, the bottom line is, like you said, man, like Jalen Hurts deserves to get his money. And this in no shape, way, or form should he be shortchanged by that because of his style of play, because of the way he plays the position. It doesn't matter. He's shown you an ability to get you to a Super Bowl and play good enough to win the game. You got to pay him.
Here's the one fly in the ointment, and the Hurts devotees aren't going to like this. And you know I'm actually one of them, but I'm also a realistic guy who can look through it objectively rather than eagle-colored glasses. Jalen Hurts was phenomenal this year. He's second best player in the National Football League. Only Mahomes was better. I think he was actually the best quarterback on the field in the Super Bowl, even though Mahomes won the MVP. He outplayed him for my money. So he needs to get paid. He deserves to get paid. He's going to get paid. But he does play the game a specific way. And if you're taking advantage of Jalen Hurts' skill set, and the Super Bowl, another prime example, most rushing yards ever by a quarterback in the Super Bowl at 70. He now owns that record after one shot at it. How much are you guessing? And no one can know for sure. None of us have a crystal ball, but how much are you factoring in? All right, Jalen is going to be injured X amount of games because we're going to put him at risk, because we want to take advantage of a skill that he has that this side of Lamar Jackson, nobody else in the National Football League has. And oh, by the way, isn't Lamar a shining example of what can happen when you get a quarterback who runs as much as he does? Lamar has been injured as much as he has. And that just ends your season. When Lamar Jackson goes down, the Ravens season over. If he's not playing in the playoffs, over. Well, the Eagles were lucky in that Jalen Hurts got hurt this year, only missed 2 games, was able to come back for a third, and be healthy enough, not 100%, but healthy enough in the postseason. You can get away with that when he's making $2 million. When he's making $50 million and, oh, shoot, Jalen's going to be out for 5 weeks, your season's over. You're screwed. So is that anything that the Eagles have to be able to negotiate around? Will Jalen accept that, hey, listen, we want to pay you the same as every other quarterback in the league, but you're a guy who's probably going to have injury issues in your career, and we need to protect ourselves. Is that going to wash it all in a negotiation between Hurts and Howie Roseman?
It's definitely going to come up. But I also think it's how you structure the contract, right? I think if they put enough, I guess the term you'll use is off ramps, but it's always how you structure the contract, and ultimately, you got to know what you're paying for. At the end of the day, you have to understand what you're paying for, and you have to understand why a certain player is successful. I think Jalen Hurts is actually better than Lamar Jackson. I think he's a better thrower. I think he's I think he's a smarter runner. I don't see Jalen Hurts taking the same kind of hits as Lamar Jackson, but again, we got to be mindful. Jalen Hurts ran the ball more than he did last season. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is he ran that ball more, and he took more hits just by the math. So when you pay him, you have to keep in mind, this is your style of play, Jalen. This is what you do. Now, are you going to begin to run less and throw more? We don't want to change your game. We don't want to change what makes you great, but I definitely expect Jalen Hurts' game to continue to round itself out in the passing game. And as he gets older, I think he'll begin to run a bit less and less and less, and just to be a little bit more judicious with his rush attempts. Again, they ran him more this year than they did last year. That was something I didn't expect to happen, but it did. So we're going to really it's really one of those conversations that's so up in the air. I almost don't really have an answer for you, Jody. I just think it's one of those things that you have to structure this contract where as though he gets what he wants, you get what you want, and everybody, for the most part, is protected.
I will debate with you a little bit that he's a smarter runner than Lamar Jackson. He's a tougher runner than Lamar Jackson. He's stronger than Lamar Jackson. I've said this a couple times here and elsewhere. The lament after the loss that they didn't have that good straight-ahead runner, that between-the-tackles runner, that guy who's going to move the pile like they did in 2017 with LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi. Oh, yeah, they do. It's just his name's Jalen Hurts. He's the quarterback. They've got a great between the tackles, move the pile rusher. He just happens to be the QB on this team. So the lamenting, I think, is misplaced. But he does. He puts his body at risk, and he's going to because he's that tough of a guy. He's that strong and well-built enough of a guy, and he's got that mindset. So I don't know what you can say. He's a smarter runner than Lamar.
So can I ask? So let me ask you this, Jody. To your point, right? About the Eagles using Jalen in those short yardage, situations as their power back to, move the line forward, so on and so forth. Do you think this Eagles coaching staff would be even willing to run less designed runs for him and actually get a running back that does what you want Jalen Hurts to do? Operate in those short yardage situations. They had Trey Sermon, but they didn't want to really give him any time. I don't know if he didn't. I don't know if he didn't show them enough. I don't know, but they felt like Trey Sermon wasn't a guy that needed to get that many snaps. So, do you see them making a thought to say, okay, we need to bring in a power back so we can run our quarterback just a bit less?
It's a very legitimate question. They're going to redo their entire running back room. I don't think Miles is going to be back. Who knows about Boston Scott? Trey Sermon may or may not be here. The only given is going to be Kenny Gainwell, and we don't even know how they're going to plan on using. Is he going to be their lead back? Is he going to stay in the role, maybe expand a little bit of what he was in this year? Oh, that's wide open for not only debate, but to be determined by the Eagles, depending on how they want to run their offense. And you're suggesting, it's a distinct possibility that they do try and get a specific running back who goes more between the tackles just because they can take that away from Jalen Hurts and put him at risk less going forward. He's Tone DeShields in for Johnny Mack. I'm Jody McDonald. We had a GM in hour number 1. We got a GM in hour number 2. That's not a general manager. It was Jeff Mosher in hour number 1. Coming up next is longtime NFL writer and author Gary Myers going to jump in with us. We'll talk both about the Super Bowl, the Eagles, and a little Hall of Fame since Gary is one of the selectors as well. We got Gary Myers joining us next year on Birds 365.
Post-game show with Seth Joyner.
I knew that they had a running game.
Derek Gunn.
He has put in the effort.
Devin Caney.
Had we not won the Super Bowl, what would we be saying?
And Mike Missinelli.
Well, you know who Philly is.
Post-game, now streaming on the 6ABC family of apps.
Why do millions of people every year from around the world visit Philly's Rocky statue?
You want to tell me the sky is burgundy with green stripes and yellow polka dots? I'll meet you on that. But you're never going to convince me Rocky is anything other than the pure greatness that it is. Never going to happen.
Join me, Paul Farber, for WHYY's The Statue. We're going on a journey to explore the biography of the Rocky statue. Find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, Managing Partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Appreciate you streaming in here on Birds 365. Tony Shields in for Johnny Mac today with me, Jody Mac. We're going to spend a good couple of minutes talking about the Eagles, the Super Bowl, the Hall of Fame inductees with our next guest. He is one of the 49 selectors and is longtime NFL reporter, writer, author as well. Gary Myers jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Let me start here, Gary. You, like me, are of a certain age. You've seen, if not every single Super Bowl. I've manned up and said, I really don't remember the two Packer wins at the beginning. Oh, I remember the Jets winning against the Colts in Super Bowl III. But I have very vivid memories of 55 out of 57. Where does this Super Bowl rank that they just played as far as excitement level, quality of football level? How good a watch was it? Top 5, top 10? How good is Super Bowl to compare to all the others that you've watched?
That's a great question to start off, Jody. I would say definitely not top 5. I'd have to put my list together and see if I can squeeze it into the top 10.
Top 10? All right, fair.
I just didn't like the way the game ended, with a penalty pretty much providing the winning points. I would have loved to have seen the Chiefs kicked that field goal. Jalen Hurts get the ball with like a minute 40 to go and one timeout, and see if he can get him into field goal range or maybe even get him into the end zone to avoid overtime. But boy, I know we'll get into this, but the problem I had with that penalty is they weren't calling it the entire game. There wasn't one defensive pass interference. There wasn't one defensive holding. And to call it with a minute and 50 to go or whatever, what was a borderline call to begin with, I think that really prevents this game from being put among the all-time greats. If they had kicked a field goal and the Eagles came down and won it or tied it, or the game went into overtime, then for sure, an overtime Super Bowl game would have been one of the all-time greats. But to have the officials decide it, I have a hard time thinking that was better than the Patriots Seahawks ending, the Patriots Falcons, the Giants and the Bills, the first Giants Patriots one, the Cardinals and the Steelers. And this is just off the top of my head. I'm sure I can find some more. The Bengals and the 49ers the second time, Joe driving them 92 yards. Those were all better games. This one, this game, the Chiefs played horribly in the first half. The Eagles played horribly in the second half, so it wasn't one of those games where they were just kind of going back and forth because they're both playing great. And obviously, as people in Philadelphia have to be wondering, would this game have been a blowout for the Eagles if it wasn't for that Hurts fumble?
Gary, you brought up the penalty and how it, for you at least, it impacted the lore of the matchup, the lore of the Super Bowl, and when you compare it to other games as well, understandably so. Are there any Super Bowls that you can think of, any big games in the playoffs that you can think of that had the potential of being an instant classic, but because of a decision by the refs, it kind of took away from the luster of it? Are there any matchups, any big matchups, playoff Super Bowl that you can think of that remind you of something like that, or give you a similar feeling?
Well, Tone, certainly, last year's Super Bowl, there was a holding call on the Bengals at the 2-yard line in the last minute or so. I believe the Rams were down 4 at that point. Maybe it was a 3rd and goal from the 8 or something, and it gave them a fresh set of downs, and they went on to win the game. On the other hand, the Hail Mary catch by Drew Pearson in the playoffs in 1975, Minnesota-Dallas. Dallas won that game on a very controversial pass interference call on Nate Wright. And I think that only added to the lore of that game because that became such a huge talking point. I'm trying to think of another. Oh, the Saints and the Vikings, the pass interference call that was not called. That's been another playoff game that was dictated, by the officials. There's just something and what happened last year with the Bengals and Rams wasn't talked about as much, I don't think, as this penalty on Bradbury is going to be talked about, because this was so borderline to begin with. First quarter of the third game of the season, this was a borderline call. Less than 2 minutes to go in a suit and tie game in a Super Bowl. I just don't see how you call it, because first and foremost, they hadn't been calling it the entire game.
Yep.
This is not the first time something in the game had happened like that. I mean, Bradbury should have been called, I think it was in the second quarter.
The first thing I thought of when I saw the flag come out, when they said there's a flag, oh, by the way, I never saw the flag. It wasn't shown on TV. You had to be told that there was a flag on a play. And then they showed the replay. I said, oh, that's soft.
Well, Jody, you saw the flag on the replay, and he threw it I thought he threw it once the ball landed in the end zone. I didn't see him throw it when there was that contact. I could be wrong about that one because, when they were showing the ball landing in the end zone, I saw a flag. I thought that's when it came out, but
don't know exactly when the referee threw it. So, but we can all agree that it was just a soft call.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts was not soft. I think he actually outplayed Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Mahomes gets the MVP because his team won.
Yeah.
And Mahomes played very well, but I thought Hurts played phenomenally. The fumble included, which was a huge part of it. Can't give him an A+, but you can give him an A-. I thought he was that good. How much is it going to cost the Eagles? That they're going to have to give him a contract extension, which is going to be top of the market. He's going to get what Russell Wilson got, what Josh Allen's got. Is this going to end up being a problem for the Eagles because they're going to try and hold it in check? Is the Deshaun Watson total guaranteed contract going to be a hurdle this team has to get over? How tough is it going to be to get Jalen Hurts signed to an extension for the Birds?
Yeah, I think the Deshaun Watson contract, the teams are trying to paint that as an aberration and holding the line on fully guaranteeing those contracts. You've seen that. I'm sure that's a holdup with Lamar Jackson and why that hasn't gotten signed yet. The Eagles have always done a really good job managing the cap, signing their young players to extensions, buying out restricted or free agent years, for non-first round picks, fifth-year options for first-round picks. So with Hurts going into his fourth and final year of his contract, the Eagles have an opportunity to get him signed to a long-term deal or deal with it after next season and have to go the franchise route. And then you hope you have him signed by July 15th. It will cause hard feelings, putting the franchise tag on him. No player wants that kind of restriction. So seeing how the Eagles have dealt with this in the past, I would anticipate something getting done in the offseason, between now and training camp. How much it's going to cost them? It's going to cost them market value, which, continues to change with each contract that gets signed. So I would say, Dak Prescott at $40 million a year is probably the floor of this contract, and the ceiling, was it 50, 55? He's going to set the market now on contracts. He's in a perfect situation. They did not lose that game because of Jalen Hurts. They nearly won it because of him. He was the best player. He was the best player on the field. And Jody, I agree with you 100%. The Eagles win that game. He's got the MVP trophy. One other thing I just want to say about that penalty, I thought it was really stand-up of James Bradbury to say, yeah, it was holding. I thought he took the heat off the officials by saying that, once he watches the tape of that play, he might feel a little bit differently because there's so many people that I respect that have come out and said that wasn't a flag.
We brought up Jalen Hurts' contract, and it made me think about the way the quarterback contracts can somehow take a chokehold or a stranglehold on organization's cap space, and it makes it that much harder to build out and fill out your roster with top tier talent. That's just the name of the game, though, especially in this day and age with the NFL. I'm curious, Gary, you've covered this game for a long time. You've written many books about this game. You've covered some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Has there ever been a time similar to this one where a position in particular has had a stranglehold on a team's assets like the quarterback position does now?
Boy, that's an interesting question. First thing I'll say is that's why it's almost incumbent on these teams who draft quarterbacks really high to take advantage of their rookie contracts. For the 3 or 4 years, they get to pay them what's not market value and then build a team up around them. Because if these guys live up to expectations, and certainly a guy like Jalen Hurts has far exceeded expectations, they're going to have to pay for it and make up for it by not being able to pay market value across the board to some of the players that they want to keep. I would think that ever since the free agency salary cap system came into effect in 93, 94 in that area, that it's always been, okay, what do we have to pay the quarterback? Are we going to have money to build a team around him after we pay him? Probably never more so than it is now, Tone, strictly because the cap has gotten so high. And could you ever imagine 10 years ago a quarterback averaging $45 or $50 million a year? When you think about it, in the first year of the salary cap, the cap was $34 million. Now you have players making more than that by themselves. So this is a great time in NFL history to be a great quarterback.
Really quickly, Jody, Gary, is there a contract that comes to your mind right now that you could think of like, wow, if that guy was getting paid today, he would be making north of $50 million? Is there a contract you could think of back then that you probably say to yourself, wow, he was grossly underpaid for how good he was?
Well, the first guy that comes to mind wasn't even a quarterback. Lawrence Taylor, the most he ever made in the season was $2.5 million. Wow. And I talked to Lawrence about that fairly recently. And I said, can you imagine being a free agent in this market coming off your 1986 season when you were the
almost shed a tear.
MVP, 20.5 sacks? He goes, they would have had to name it Giants and Taylor Stadium. I've seen lines from people saying, if you played today, what would they have said about you? And they would have called me partner.
Partner, right?
Partner, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But, Taylor saying they would have named after the stadium after him. I mean, it's probably not far from being wrong. But, quarterbacks from that era, Elway, Marino, Joe Montana. Joe Montana's last contract with when he played for Kansas City in 93 and 94 was 3 years, $10.5 million. Think about that.
Yeah, now you get backup D-backs who make that kind of money if they're good enough to be able to play in the slot. Just
Jody Mack, just think about this. Tom Brady, if he wasn't so unselfish, and he was during his prime years with the Patriots, what he could have been making. He would have been setting the market in 2015 and, even earlier than that. But, he bought in to the whole program there. We can keep this a Super Bowl caliber team as long as we're not paying you what the top of the market is. And whether he regrets that or not, I don't know. I mean, he's got so much money and he's got a huge contract coming from Fox where he's going to make more than he ever did in his football contract.
Right.
But, he could have held up the Patriots but probably would have won fewer Super Bowls.
And, oh, by the way, he was married to a woman who was making more money than he was for a good chunk of that time that he was the face of the National Football League. So nobody's going to throw a pity party for
No,
Tommy
I don't
B.
think so.
There's nothing wrong with marrying up, Jody. You got to marry up sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you did books by he and Brady and Manning together. I don't know if you talked to him recently or not. Is he at peace with his decision? We know he unretired last year. He's done now, right? You got to read on him as to whether there is a change of heart coming in the next month or so.
Oh, I don't think he's changing his mind this time. And the reason for that is I think he's very realistic about the way he played last year. And I remember in 2014 when someone said, "How are you going to know it's good time to retire?" And I know this answer has kind of made the round since he retired. He says, "I know it's time to retire when I suck." And I mean, those were his words. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that he sucked last year.
No, he didn't.
But he did not play. I mean, his numbers were astronomical, yards and completions, but that's because they couldn't run the ball. And I saw him play a lot of games last year, and he just wasn't the same player. At the first sign of pressure, I thought he either threw the ball in the dirt or he went down. He wasn't hanging in there like he had, trading a big play for a hit like he had in the past. I didn't think he was as accurate with his throws. For some reason, he just lacked chemistry with Mike Evans all last season, which was so bizarre because they already played 2 years together. I don't see him. I see him living in Miami where his kids are going to be. And if he was going to play anywhere, it would be with the Dolphins. I don't think the Dolphins are interested anymore. They were for the last couple of years. I think he's going to take a year off from football, be around his kids. And he's got so many business interests that will keep him busy. I just really, it's a long way of saying I think he's done. And I'm glad for that too, because I just didn't think he was the same player last year.
Yeah, with Tom retiring, it just opens the floodgates for people to say, Patrick Mahomes is the new face of the NFL, which I believe he is. He's the new GOAT. Can he catch Tom Brady? You hear all those different narratives. With this Super Bowl, his second Super Bowl, winning 2 out of the 3 Super Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, 2 league MVPs, multi-time All-Pro, Patrick Mahomes is on pace for an already, some say already a Hall of Fame career. What's been your evaluation of Patrick Mahomes' career thus far? And do you believe that he can potentially catch Brady? And also, do you believe that if he retired today, he kind of has a Hall of Fame resume already? It's kind of a 3-part question.
Yeah. Jody will tell you at our age, you're going to have to probably give me those questions one at a time.
My apologies.
Let me get a pen out here and write this down.
I should be writing those down. But I love talking about this part of it. Can Patrick Mahomes catch Tom Brady? And this is my answer to that. If anybody who's playing today can catch Brady, it's certainly Mahomes. First and foremost, because he's got 2 already and he's been to 3 Super Bowls. The reason I don't think that he will is when you look at all the best young quarterbacks in the NFL, they're all in the AFC. Tom had to get by one guy every year, and that was Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Now he's got to get by Herbert, who hasn't even gone very far in the playoffs yet. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I'm forgetting somebody here for sure.
Trevor Lawrence is growing.
Trevor Lawrence. Okay, there you go. So not only does he now have to win his division, because that gives you the best opportunity to get to the Super Bowl, but then he's going to be facing all these guys. Just look at what he had to do to get to the Super Bowl. He had to beat Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow, and then he gets to the Super Bowl and had to beat Jalen Hurts, a runner-up for the MVP. So just getting to the Super Bowl is much more of a challenge, I think, than Brady ever faced. And Brady would not have gotten to the Super Bowl the last 3 years if he stayed with the Patriots. I'm fairly certain of that. And he took advantage of when he went to the NFC, he had to get past in his Super Bowl year. He had to get past Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers, but he had the advantage that year of playing. That was the pandemic year where he didn't face a full house in the Superdome, and he didn't face a full house in Lambeau Field, which would have created a much different atmosphere and a much more difficult situation for him. But, for the most part, for the 20 years of his career, at least the first 15 or so before Peyton retired, it was really just one guy he had to get past for the most part. And because Patrick faces so many quality quarterbacks in the AFC, I think it's much tougher. I know that was one of the questions. Hit me with 2 and 3.
No, that satisfied me right there.
Okay.
That was great.
I remember one of them. Hey, non-senior moment for Jody McDonald. Thank you very
All right.
much. Is Mahomes already a Hall of Famer?
Oh, okay.
It blows out his knee tomorrow, can never play football again, breaks his hip, whatever, can't play. Did he do enough so far
And
in
to
his
add to that,
short-term career to be a Hall of Famer?
Oh, don't add. I'm not going to remember your part now.
Just really quickly,
Yeah,
Terrell
yeah.
Davis made it to Hall of Fame. Only played
That's
what,
exactly, Tone. It's exactly what I was going to say. If Terrell Davis is in with 4 good seasons, and he got in because of his 2 playoff runs, 1 Super Bowl MVP. If Terrell Davis is in, then if Patrick Mahomes announces tomorrow he's retiring, in my opinion, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I only wish good health for Patrick because I want to see what he can do and how much Andy and Brett Veach can keep that team intact. I want him to have the best shot to be as great as he can be. And the 2 factors are his health and the quality of the players around him. He proved this year he can win without an elite receiver.
True.
You know, other than Travis Kelce. They did not replace Tyreek Hill. I mean, they put together some nice pieces around him, and who knows what Kadarius Toney will become if he can stay healthy, because the Giants drafted him thinking he was going to be Tyreek Hill. They just couldn't keep him on the field, and they got fed up with him. And you saw what he can do in that punt return. He had a couple of games for the Giants last year, particularly in New Orleans and Dallas, where he was dynamic, and they just couldn't keep him on the field. So he's the kind of player, and he's on that rookie contract for another few years, that with a full training camp in Kansas City, you know, he can give him that weapon. But I think if there's anybody playing today that can be Brady, it's Mahomes, and he's got a head start on everybody because he's got the 2 championships already.
Agreed. And I thank Tone for taking the question that direction, because now it leads directly into my next question.
Great.
I don't like agreeing with Deion Sanders, and he's an obnoxious jerk most of the time. But I think he's actually got some legs to stand on here.
All right, who do you have a problem with on the Hall of Fame class this year?
Yeah,
I knew you were going there.
That's where I'm going.
All right, tell me who you got a problem with.
You know how big a Klecko guy I am, and I'm ecstatic that he finally got in. And he went all the years that never got in the front door. He had to come in the side door. Who the hell cares? He's in. And you know how big a Klecko guy I am. But 9 more guys this year. It seems like the final 5 finalists get in en masse every year. The senior/contributor went to a pretty big class of 4 this year, so it is a big class. Is it just too easy to get into the Hall of Fame? Deion, of course, being the loudmouth that he is, overstates it, and you need an upper level and a lower level, and he comes off like the pompous jerk he is. But I think underlining, he's got at least a legitimate point. Are we getting too many large classes of Hall of Famers, and is it bringing down the overall quality of the Hall of Fame a little bit?
No, I don't think so. And if Deion says it, I automatically disagree with it.
Oh, I didn't go that far. I disagree with him, not as far as you.
Think about this. There's been about, I don't know the exact number, 20 to 25,000 players in NFL history, including the coaches, general managers, owners, contributors. There's about 370 in the Hall of Fame. Now, I used to be really good in math. Tone, you're a lot younger, so you're probably really good in math still.
I'm still trying to stay sharp. I'm still trying to stay sharp. Trying.
370 out of 25,000 to me doesn't necessarily mean we're putting too many in. The reason there were 3 seniors, and there'll be 3 seniors for each of the next 2 years, we have such a backlog of seniors who, for whatever reason, didn't get in as modern era candidates that really are deserving. And I put Joe Klecko definitely in that category. I don't know how he went to 20 years as a modern era candidate without getting in. I wasn't on the committee at that point. But trust me, when we narrow it down to the final 15, it is a really difficult decision to cut it to 10, and then even harder to cut it to 5. And there are some good players that are in the queue waiting to get in that I think deserve it. I would have a really hard time, objectively speaking here, of arguing against any of the 5 guys that got in this year. I'm talking about the modern era guys. I'd like to know if of those 5 guys, who do you either think didn't deserve to get in ever, or who should have had to wait longer?
Yeah, I got no problem with the first timers. That's for damn sure.
No, I mean Joe Thomas and Darrelle Revis. I mean Zach Thomas, DeMarcus Ware. Who am I forgetting? God.
Rondé Barber got in.
Rondé Barber. I'm sorry. Yeah, Rondé Barber.
My only knock on Rondé is I thought Eric Allen was as good as Rondé Barber, and we're still waiting on him.
You thought who was? I'm sorry.
Eric Allen.
Oh, Eric Allen. Okay. Well, that's your Philly bias. So
absolutely guilty as charged. Philly bias. But by the way,
don't you remember
the Raiders and the
Rondé?
Saints? It was pretty damn good there too.
Well, don't you remember Rondé running back that pick 6 against the Eagles in the championship game?
He made it into the Hall of Fame on the backs of an interception.
Well, he had
good job, Gary. Way to rub salt in the wounds to the bleeding at the Eagles fans for the Sunday loss to the Chiefs. Thanks, bud.
Yeah, well, sorry. Rondé had a lot of touchdowns in his career. I can't remember the exact number, but when I heard it this year, when it was brought up in the conversation, it really makes you think. Plus, he had a lot of sacks.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I think the sacks are what got him in, and that was kudos and credit to his coordinator who let him blitz from the.
Yeah, but I just think there's so many guys that are deserving of being in. I know when you turn around and you look at baseball and they put one guy in, and Scott Rowland. I think if you're going to make an argument of too many guys getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame, this year would be the argument because, I mean, I'm a big baseball fan, as you know, Jody, and I never looked at Scott Rowland and said, I'm watching a future Hall of Famer.
Nor did I.
Yeah,
I can put my Philly bias aside on that one and tell you, Rowland close, but no, he's just short for me, and he's going to go in. So, that's why I asked the question. That's why I think Deion has at least got a leg to stand on in making the point.
What Deion's getting hung up on is the total number. When you're looking at the 5 modern era guys, I think they're all extremely deserving, but it makes it seem like we're putting so many in when you add in the 3 seniors and the contributor. You go, wow, 9 guys. That's a lot, and it is a lot.
Hall of Fame class,
But it's really, it's 5 by the modern era committee. It used to be 2 seniors and a contributor, and then the next year was 1 senior and 2 contributors. And we decided there were much more deserving seniors than there were contributors after we established that category a few years ago, because they all used to be grouped together with the modern guys. And we've kind of, I don't want to say run out of really qualified coaches and contributors, but I think the ones that are deserving to be in are now in. And maybe on the contributor coach side, we can put them back in the modern category so we don't guarantee a spot there every year. As far as the seniors, I'm good for another 2 years of putting 3 in. We get a list of 150 guys to start with. And I don't have a hard time narrowing it down to 25 and then to 15. But there's been some strong cases made for some of these seniors that are still waiting.
Gary, I want to take a slight pivot.
Okay.
You've covered this game, like I said before. You covered it for a long time. You've written many books covering this game, and you've most notably covered one of the most prolific rivalries in the NFL, and that's the Brady and Manning era. Is there any rivalry that you see today that has potential to being maybe on par with the Brady Manning, or maybe even coming close, or potentially exceeding it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something to look forward to. And first of all, it has to be 2 guys who are playing in the same conference, because what makes the rivalry great is when they meet in the playoffs. So I think you have the beginning of one now between Mahomes and Joe Burrow, because they've met in the playoffs in the AFC Championship game 2 years in a row.
Mm-hmm.
I would throw Josh Allen in there because he's now played against Patrick twice in the playoffs and against Burrow once. Those are the three guys whose teams look like they're built to last as much as a team can be built to last in this era. That each year for the next few years, I think we're going to project each of those three teams to be in the playoffs, which obviously increases the odds that they're going to meet in the playoffs. But also the way the NFL formula scheduling is set up, where if you're not playing a certain division each year within your conference, some of the wild card games are the first place teams in the conference that you'll play. So, next year we will have Mahomes and Burrow and Mahomes and Josh Allen and Burrow. So it gives them an opportunity to build on that. Brady and Manning played 17 times. Brady led at 11-6. Manning led at 3-2 in the playoffs, and he won the last three meetings between the two of them in the playoffs, which were all in AFC championship games. So whereas it was one-sided for Brady in the total numbers, in the playoffs, which is what we all really remember, the last three times they met with the Super Bowl on the line, once when Peyton was in Indianapolis and twice when he was in Denver, and Tom being obviously in New England all three times, Peyton won all three of them. And then he went on to win his only two Super Bowls. So, that's what made the Brady Manning one really special, is 5 times in the playoffs. And Patrick is off to a great rivalry with the other two guys. So I would say, there's a good chance of a Brady Manning rivalry because these are young guys who play on really good teams.
Final word: someone has to be Phillip Rivers in this situation. I don't know if it's going to be Josh Allen. I don't know if it's Burrow, but right now it's looking like Mahomes and Burrow are the main two, and Allen is on track to being that odd man out, that third wheel. I guess you'll say.
Yeah, until Josh Allen gets to the Super Bowl, he's Phillip Rivers. I love that analogy because that's what it is at this point. But these are young guys with a long way to go. In 3 years, we might be saying, hey, Josh Allen's got 3 Super Bowl championships. He's got more than Mahomes. Who knows?
All right. The wait is still on for your Giant book. Once Giant tying the 86 Super Bowl great team to the rest of their lives and what transpires and how they still stay connected. How many more months we got to wait for this next Gary Myers outstanding NFL novel?
I wish it was just a month, but it's coming out on September 12th. As you start to say, it's called Once a Giant, a story of victory, tragedy, and life after football. And it's the most important book and the best book I've ever written.
Nice.
Because it's about such an important topic. Players in their 50s and 60s, and what is their life like in these years after football. And whereas I decided to write about this 86 Giants team because I know it so well, and I know what a brotherhood it became and it still is, which really makes this story unique, is how close these players are still. With Harry Carson as their captain for life. First phone call when a player has a problem is they call Harry, and he rounds up the troops, and they all take care of him. But it's really a story that football fans in general, you don't have to care about the Giants or like the Giants, because the stories in the book really relate to the 86 Eagles or the 86 Cowboys, because although I didn't write about those guys, what these players are experiencing, I'm sure is exactly the same as what those other teams, those players of that era are experiencing. And one thing, Philly-centric, I have to tell you this story. You guys might know it, you might not. The 1984, I believe, USFL supplemental draft, I think that was the year of the supplemental draft, where the NFL kind of sensed that the USFL was going to go out of business. So rather than having like a free-for-all, they had a draft of the USFL players that, like, when their contracts are up or if the league folded, each team would have the rights to a player. Giants were picking third. The first player picked was Steve Young. Second player picked was Mike Rozier. Giants are picking third. On the board was Reggie White and Gary Zimmerman. Bill Parcells stood on a table and pleaded with George Young to take Reggie White. The Giants had a horrible offensive line. George Young said, nope, I'm taking Gary Zimmerman. Gary Zimmerman doesn't play for the Giants. He refuses to play. They trade him to Minnesota for 2 second-round picks. George made very good use out of the 2 second-round picks. But can you, Tone DeShields, and you, Jody Mack, imagine Reggie White on the left side of the Giants line and Lawrence Taylor on the right side of the Giants line? It came this close to happening, and if Bill Parcells was calling the shots, as he did in New England and in Dallas and later with Miami, if he was calling the shots with the Giants, 100% Reggie White would have been a New York Giant.
As the football guys say, you can't have it all. You can't have it all.
you had told me that story previously. If those are the kind of stories you're going to get, even Eagle fans are going to want to read.
That's tremendous.
Once a Giant story of victory, tragedy, and life after football comes out in September. One last note. You accused me earlier of Philly bias. I'll tie it in together here. Chris, Phil Simms, part of your story.
Yeah.
I feel badly for him because he's got Chris Simms as his son, who just, if there is a bias, oh my God, he can't get over not rating Jalen Hurts as one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. He continues to dig a hole for himself by saying that, the easiest job in the NFL is being the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Jalen Hurts could do it. Gardner Minshew could do it. Well, they tried that. They went 0-2.
Yeah.
So, yes, when you talk to Phil before the book comes out, give him my condolences.
You know, I've known Chris since he was old enough to walk, and Phil used to bring him into the Giants locker room. Literally, I've known him since he's an infant, and I really like him, and I'm proud of him, what he's turned, the career he's had, and he might have had a better career in the NFL if it wasn't for the spleen injury when he was in Tampa. But he also was standing on the table saying that Zach Wilson was better than Trevor Lawrence. So he's got a couple of that are really hard to defend. But I do respect his opinion. Otherwise, but the one that really sticks out, and this is probably 8 or 10 years ago, and this is Tom Brady's prime. And I heard him on the local radio here, Jody, saying that Tom Brady wasn't a top 5 quarterback. And it's like 2012 or 13, right in the middle of when he's still getting to lots of Super Bowls. And I go, Chris, young man, I think you need to talk to your dad a little bit.
Yeah, he's not spending enough quality time with his father. Knows a little bit better.
But I will say this about Jalen Hurts. When I first saw him play for the Eagles, I did not think he threw it well enough to have the success he's had now. I was completely wrong, and I'll admit it. That touchdown pass he threw to A.J. Brown. Now, I know he was trusting Brown to make that catch because he was bigger and stronger, and you want to give your best players an opportunity to make plays, but that was still a great throw and putting it in a perfect location. This guy's a big-time quarterback. As long as the Eagles can keep this team intact, he's going to win a Super Bowl at some point.
That's why we like having Gary Myers on, because he admits when he's wrong, unlike Chris Simms. GM, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on. We'll certainly have you on during the offseason when the free agency starts and everything else. Thanks for hopping in with us today.
Thanks a lot for having me on, guys. Tone, nice to meet you. And you ask great questions. The man over here has something to learn from you, from the young fella.
Yes. Unlike
I'm learning from Jay Mack. I'm learning from Jody Mack.
Jody is my favorite, so I'm just teasing him. He knows that.
GM, always a pleasure, brother. Thanks, pal.
Take care, guys.
Take care, sir. Here with us on Birds 365. All right, we're running late. Come back. Final break. We'll put a bow on the show. Stay right here with us on Birds 365.
Philadelphia fans. We're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Go for the beers, go for the cheers, go for the hit and the hits. Go for the scene, go for the screens, go for the gallery, go for the win, go to Ocean.
Hi everybody, my name's Jason Lombardi. I'm an inspector at DryTech. At DryTech we offer three major services, the first one being basement waterproofing. The second service we offer is foundation and structural repairs. And then the third service that we offer is mold remediation. If you feel you are having a waterproofing issue, give DryTech a call or check us out online.
My name is Fran Salerno. I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
Appreciate you hanging with us, streaming on Birds 365. We thank both of our guests, Jeff Mosher in hour one, Gary Myers in hour two. Both were great. We thank them much. Just to wrap things up, it is official. Shane Steichen is the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. That has been made official. I'll now predict that even if Gannon's going to get the job, we're not going to find out about it for 3 or 4 days because the Cardinals are going to want the limelight. The Colts now have it because they're going to make an announcement with Steichen. So they're going to be the center of attention. There's only the 2 head coaching positions left. So one of them will be the main focus of concentration. NFL Network, ESPN, when it comes to NFL stories the next 48 hours. So the Cardinals will wait, but it could be both Eagle coordinators coming off the board going elsewhere next year. And we'll be here to talk about it tomorrow. Tone, outstanding job out of you filling in for Johnny Mac today. Thank you very much, bud.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Grateful to you, as always, Jody. Learning from the best.
Our pleasure. And, McMullen probably just going to bed right about now. He had a late-night flight coming back, red-eye from the West Coast. I hope he did the Uber thing that he didn't get in the car and drive after that.
John works hard, man. Listen, John, if only the people knew, man. John is a grinder.
Johnny Mac grinds with the best of them, and he'll get a good day's sleep, not night sleep, day sleep today, and then be here with us on Birds 365 tomorrow morning in 2 at 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.